Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Satara Sata Shri Śrimad. His Divine Grace, Rabbi Charandavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON Panduracharya Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki, BBT Panduracharya Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Jayanati Lila Vishnu Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Satara Sata Shri Śrimad. Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Swami Prabhupada Ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki, Grantaraj Śrimad Bhāgavatam Ki, Gaur Premanandi. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Srila Prabhupada. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, Volume 6, chapter titled, I Have Done My Part. Last week we read about the attack in Mayapur and the resultant response by the devotees and the community. So we're reading this one report. Prabhupada was feeling a little dejected about that. So, in an attempt to ease Prabhupada's sorrow, it interferes with the book. In an attempt to ease Prabhupada's sorrow, Tamal Krishna started reading the latest report from Ganesham. Ganesham is Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, who is distributing books in Eastern Europe. The report of extraordinary success drew Prabhupada's attention away from Mayapur. He smiled and said, "That is dynamic." Tamal Krishna continued reading the report. "Everywhere we go, people either know about you or they are very eager to find out about Krishna and yourself by reading your books. Anyone who has distributed your books in the communist country will support my claim that nowhere in the world are people more appreciative of your books." Tamal Krishna looked up from the letter and commented, He has been everywhere, Prabhupada, and he said that your books are more appreciated in the communist countries than anywhere else in the world. Yes, said Srila Prabhupada, they are hungry. A few days later, a full on-the-scene report came in the mail from Jayapatak Swami in Mayapur. The local Hindus of Mayapur were outraged at what had happened and were mobilizing mass petitions in support of the ISKCON temple. The attack had been carried out by the Mohammedan community. Although the newspaper reports were false, gradually people were learning the facts. Jayapataka reported vivid details of Bhavananda and other devotees being marched through Navadvip in chains on their way to court, and the people of Navadvip offering them respects. The devotees were still in jail, he said, constantly chanting Hare Krishna. On the whole, the report was optimistic. Prasadam distribution was continuing in Mayapur. Book distribution in West Bengal was increasing, and the preaching parties were well received wherever they went. Srila Prabhupada's prediction was coming true. The incident was turning in the devotees' favor. He commented that the enemies had thought they were digging up a garden snake by attacking Krishna's devotees, but they were finding that they had in fact unearthed a cobra. July was a good month for Srila Prabhupada's work on Śrimad Bhāgavatam. He continued dictating very early in the morning and in the afternoon, completing chapters 8 and 9 of the 10th canto. It was his great pleasure to do so. Working on Śrimad Bhāgavatam, he was completely transcendental to his physical condition, despite the accompanying heart palpitations and despite his faint voice and general weakness. Even to sit up was difficult, and yet once he began working, nothing could stop him. Speaking into the hand microphone of his dictating machine, oblivious to his bodily condition, Prabhupada described patiently and methodically how Nanda Maharaj's family priest, Garga Muni, performed the name-giving ceremony for baby Krishna. In his purport, Srila Prabhupada often spoke from his personal experiences and realization. Quote, "This is the mission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and devotees also have the same mission. One who executes this mission of para upakara, performing welfare activities for people in general, is recognized by Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as being very, very dear to him. Na chatasme manusyeshu kaschin me priyakritamaha." Similarly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has advised this para upakara, and he has especially instructed the inhabitants of India. On the whole, the duty of a pure Vaishnava devotee is to act for the welfare of others. End quote. Sometimes sitting in the pre-dawn open air on the second floor veranda, and sometimes in the humid heat of the bright afternoon, Srila Prabhupada worked, describing the limitless Vedic knowledge, just as his predecessors, the Goswamis and Krishnadas Kaviraj, had done when worshiping Krishna and Lord Chaitanya while living in Vrindavan. Srila Prabhupada, however, was the first great acharya to make Krishna-conscious literature available to persons of all countries throughout the world, regardless of birth, status, or previous character. Even as he composed the latest chapters of Śrimad Bhāgavatam, thousands of young men and women were working on his behalf to preach the Vedic message to the world. His disciples were, in fact, keenly aware of how Srila Prabhupada was producing the 10th canto, purports, in Vrindavan, and they prayed to Lord Krishna that he be allowed to continue for many years so that he could complete the entire Śrimad Bhāgavatam. In explaining the infant pastimes of Lord Krishna, Srila Prabhupada described an entirely transcendental mode of consciousness, beyond material designations of babyhood or old age. All these pastimes of Krishna and the great enjoyment exhibited by the mothers are transcendental. Nothing about them is material. They are described in Brahma Samhita as Ananda Chinmaya Rasa. In the spiritual world, there is anxiety, there is crying, and there are other feelings similar to those in the material world. But because the reality of these feelings is in the transcendental world, of which this world is only an imitation, Mother Yashoda and Rohini enjoyed them transcendentally. Srila Prabhupada was now rendering a particularly sweet part of Krishna's pastimes, and with relish he described Krishna stealing butter and feeding it to the monkeys, and his showing the universal form to Mother Yashoda. In describing the vision, and describing how the vision of Krishna's universal form was beyond Mother Yashoda's comprehension, Srila Prabhupada shed light on all incomprehensible situations, including his own. Quote, "She, Mother Yashoda, could do nothing but offer obeisances to the Lord. One should not try to understand the supreme cause by argument or reasoning. When we are beset by some problems for which we can find no reason, there is no alternative than to surrender to the Supreme Lord and offer Him our respectful obeisances. Then our position will be secure. This was the means adopted in this instance also by Mother Yashoda. Whatever happens, the original cause is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the immediate cause cannot be ascertained, let us simply offer our obeisances at the lotus feet of the Lord. Mother Yashoda concluded that the wonderful things she saw in the mouth of her child were due to Him, although she could not clearly ascertain the cause. End quote. Srila Prabhupada made deep and joyful appreciations of the pure devotion of Mother Yashoda for baby Krishna, and he described her as the emblem of all pure devotees of the Lord, especially the residents of Vrindavan. And he described her as the emblem of all pure devotees of the Lord, especially the residents of Vrindavan, who love the Lord in spontaneous affection. The pure devotees who inhabit Vrindavan, he wrote, do not possess any bodily conception. Such pure devotees were fully dedicated to the service of the Lord in sublime affection, prema. This had been described by Lord Chaitanya, he said, as the highest perfection of life, pure love in relationship with Krishna. And Mother Yashoda, Srila Prabhupada wrote, appears to be the topmost of all the devotees who have attained this perfection. Srila Prabhupada ki. Just have to surrender. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, Canto 3, Part 2, Chapter 21, Text 7. Conversation between Manu and Kardama. Is that correct? Did we get it right? Tata samadhiyuktena kriya yogena kardamaha samprapede haring bhaktya prapana varadasasam tatak samadhiyuktena kriya yogena kardamaha samprapede haring bhaktya prapana varadasasam. Please chant. Tatak samadhiyuktena kriya yogena kardamaha samprapede haring bhaktya prapana varadasasam. Tatak samadhiyuktena kriya yogena kardamaha samprapede haring bhaktya prapana varadasasam. Tatak samadhiyuktena kriya yogena kardamaha samprapede haring bhaktya prapana varadasasam. Jai Shri Shri Aurobindo. Samprapede haring bhaktya prapana varadasasam. Tatak samadhiyuktena kriya yogena kardamaha samprapede haring bhaktya prapana varadasasam. Mr. Phil. Tatak samadhiyuktena kriya yogena kadama samprapede haring bhaktya prapana varadasusam. Tatak samadhiyuktena kriya yogena kadama samprapede haring bhaktya prapana varadasasam. Ladies. Tatak samadhiyuktena kriya yogena kadamaha prapana varadasasam. Tatak samadhiyuktena kriya yogena kadamaha samprapede haring bhaktya prapana varadasasam. Tata. Then, in that penance, samadhiyuktena, in trance, kriya yogena, by bhakti yoga worship, Kardamaha, the sage Kardama, Samprapede, served Harim, the personality of Godhead, Bhaktya, in devotional service, Prapana, to the surrendered souls, Varadashusam, the bestower of all blessings. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. During that period of penance, the sage Kardama, by worship through devotional service and trance, propitiated the personality of Godhead, who is the quick bestower of all blessings upon those who flee to Him for protection. Please repeat. During that period of penance, the sage Kardama, by worship through devotional service and trance, propitiated the personality of Godhead, who is the quick bestower of all blessings upon those who flee to Him for protection. Purport. The significance of meditation is described here. Kardama Muni practiced mystic yoga meditation for 10,000 years just to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari. Therefore, whether one practices yoga or speculates and does research to find God, one's efforts must be mixed with the process of devotion. Without devotion, nothing can be perfect. The target of perfection and realization is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly said that one who constantly engages in Krishna consciousness is the topmost yogi. The personality of Godhead Hari also fulfills the desires of his surrendered devotee. One has to surrender unto the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead Hari, or Krishna, in order to achieve real success. Devotional service or engagement in Krishna consciousness is the direct method, and all other methods, although recommended, are indirect. In this age of Kali, the direct method is especially more feasible than the indirect, because people are short-living, their intelligence is poor, and they are poverty-stricken and embarrassed by so many miserable disturbances. Lord Chaitanya, therefore, has given the greatest boon. In this age, one simply has to chant the holy name of God to attain perfection in spiritual life. The words Samprapede Harim mean that in various ways Kardama Muni satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari by his devotional service. Devotional service is also expressed by the word Kriya Yogena. Kardama Muni not only meditated, but also engaged in devotional service to attain perfection in yoga practice or meditation. To attain perfection in yoga practice or meditation, one must act in devotional service by hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. Remembering is meditation also. But who is to be remembered? One should remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not only must one remember the Supreme Person, one must hear about the activities of the Lord and chant His glories. This information is in the authoritative scriptures. After engaging himself for 10,000 years in performing different types of devotional service, Kardama Muni attained the perfection of meditation. But that is not possible in this age of Kali, where it is very difficult to live for as much as 100 years. At the present moment, who will be successful in the rigid performance of the many yoga rules and regulations? Moreover, perfection is attained only by those who are surrendered souls. Where there is no mention of the personality of Godhead, where is their surrender? And where there is no meditation upon the personality of Godhead, where is the yoga practice? Unfortunately, people in this age, especially persons who are of a demoniac nature, want to be cheated. Thus, the Supreme Personality of Godhead sends great cheaters who mislead them in the name of yoga and render their lives useless and doomed. In Bhagavad Gita, therefore, it is clearly stated in the 16th chapter, verse 17, that rascals of self-made authority, being puffed up by illegally collected money, perform yoga without following the authoritative books. They're very proud of the money they have plundered from innocent persons who wanted to be cheated. Om Jnana Tamrandasya Granjana Shakaya Chakshurma Tamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangu Mankate Guram Yukipatamaham Bande Shri Gurum Dinatanam. So although the verse gives us a clear definition of success in spiritual life through service and surrender, isn't it? The two S's. There's one more. Sincerity. So these three things have to be there in order to be successful. So there's, Prabhupada commented that the only ingredient necessary for success in spiritual life is sincerity. And he used that in a lecture. He elaborated that when Prahlad Maharaj, after Lord Nrsingadev had killed the demon Hiranyakashipu, who can imagine the scene? Not only had the Lord killed Hiranyakashipu, but he had slaughtered all of his soldiers. So there was we have a tendency to, how can you say, react to such gore. They even have little acronyms. What does it say? Not suitable for work. NSFWC, not suitable for work. In other words, don't look at this while you're supposed to be working, that or many other things. So there's all this gore, thousands, tens of thousands of these dead soldiers, no heads, no limbs, blood flowing like a river, and Hiranyakashipu with his abdomen torn open and his intestines wrapped around his Lord like a garland. This is and Prahlad Maharaj is described as a 5-year-old boy. 5-year-old in Vedic times is not the same as a 5-year-old now. There's a formula by which you can extrapolate. You add something like 7 or 8 years, and then you get the actual age. But anyway, so he's standing there, and all the demigods are there. They're all, it's like, I don't know what you want to call it. They're all coming to see this sight. They're taking great pleasure. It's like pay-per-view for mixed martial arts, everybody's there, and there's Lord Nrsingadev, and he's taking all these people on. The demigods are just like, yeah, Hari Bol, And so there's, but then when it comes time, the Lord is completely, stoked. His ears are standing up tall. When a lion or a predator becomes agitated, the hair in the back of the neck, the ears, everything becomes very prominent. And so his eyes were glaring. And, the deed is done. Everything's over. But now the Lord has to be pacified. He's in that state. He has to be pacified. And so Lord Brahma is the senior. Obviously, everybody emanates from him, demigod-wise. And so he's, looking around, just like we look around, who's going to take the flower after Mangalartik, who's going to run up and get that? So you look around, who's going to garland Lord Nrsingadev and kind of cool him down? And nobody, not Lord Brahma, not Lord Shiva, not even the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, And what was her excuse? You know what her excuse was? What was her excuse? She'd never seen that form. She wasn't sure if this was actually her husband. So she had a doubt. Prabhupada said she had a doubt. But Lord, Prahlad Maharaj, very innocent young boy, he could understand everything because of his, anyway, Prabhupada, so then Prabhupada says, like pushing a child into the cage of a lion. So they sort of say, because of you he came, therefore you go forward. And so there's Prahlad Maharaj standing in the picture holding the garland like this. And then Prabhupada said, so it is not by seniority, it is by sincerity. Because he was only 5 years old. All these other big demigods, these are the devotees, these are the agents of material creation. Lord Vishnu, of course Lord Vishnu is there, but Lord Shiva in charge of the mode of destruction, Lord Brahma in charge of creation, and none of them would approach. But because of the Prahlad Maharaj's sincerity of heart and surrender, so therefore he is the emblem, as much as Mother Yashoda is the emblem, of the attitude of the inhabitants of Vrindavan. So therefore Prahlad Maharaj is the emblem of surrender. Because who can imagine a more, how can you say, significant situation that one will ever encounter? Sometimes we think, I had to, like the devotees in Mayapur, they had to go to jail for some time until they could get bonded out. So this is a great austerity. In Bombay, there was an incident and the devotees had to be in jail for 1 month, because of some situation. Sridhar Maharaj, Giriraj Maharaj, all these devotees had to go there. Ruchi Prabhu, so that's a great austerity. You're restricted. But under those circumstances, they were simply chanting the holy name, just like it says in the Lilamrita. And in that way, the devotee's reputation becomes even more enhanced, because people then see the true nature. They don't see that they're crying and, how do they call it, gnashing of teeth and wringing of hands and just, woe is me. No, they're just sitting there, wherever. Heaven or hell, it doesn't matter. They're chanting the holy name. So we have to not necessarily meditate on such a situation, but we should always be prepared that internally, if something like this happens, will you be able to, muster the courage to do that? So this is a very important aspect in spiritual life. We go out every day, and nowadays the atmosphere is not so degraded, even though it's Kali Yuga, because of the devotees propagating the holy names. But in the past, like I was telling yesterday at the store, when we do book distribution, the demons would come, pretend to look at the book, and then they rip the book up. And this happened, every day, multiple times, all over the world, wherever the devotees were distributing, the demons were there, trying to kidnap the devotees, so much negative propaganda, brainwashing, this and that, the other thing. So this is, in one sense, a very favorable time that has been arranged by, Prabhupada's mercy, by the mercy of the devotees who have come before you, that you have a fertile field for distribution. Everything is perfectly situated at this point. Even if there's a disaster, even if you're on the brink of war, still the atmosphere is favorable. Just like in they're reading Prabhupada the report of Bhakti Tirtha's preaching in the communist country. And Prabhupada said they are hungry. So this is the mood also. Everyone is hungry for spiritual life, especially after this COVID pandemic, They're very much eager to try to understand, how did this thing happen? Why did it happen? And so much unnecessary tribulation imposed upon the population. So this is also a symptom of Kali Yuga, that the government is simply rogues and rascals, thieves, plundering through taxation and other means. So we have an opportunity to to relieve this heavy burden from the population at large by giving them pure knowledge. And that knowledge will liberate them. Raja Vidya, Raja Guya, Pravicham Idamuttamam, Pratyaksha Bhagamam Dharmyam, Susukam Kartamam. This knowledge is the king of education. The most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge. And because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and joyfully performed. This is transcendental knowledge. This is, how we understand why this movement is especially empowered in this age. There is no other, there are so many people who are preaching this and that, the other thing. I got a letter yesterday addressed to ISKCON NYC. And in it, there's a postcard. It says, heaven or hell, where will you go? And some nice Christian lady's writing me and saying, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. Handwritten. Who knows how many, she must send them out to every Hare Krishna center, because of her misguided, understanding that she needs to save us. And that's okay. There's compassion. And that compassion can be converted. They have to know what is real compassion. They have to know the nature of the soul. They don't have full knowledge. What did Prabhupada used to use that term? Incomplete knowledge of the complete. That's in the Ishopanishad. Incomplete knowledge of the complete. That is the cause of all misunderstanding, misgivings, and misfortune in the material world. Incomplete knowledge of the complete. And it is our actual pleasure, just like today, the Sunday feast. We'll go downstairs, we'll find someone to speak to. And we will find that they're completely enlivened to hear pure knowledge. They're tired of being, lied to. You flip a news channel on and all you hear is just some propaganda. That's all it is. Trying to explain things which, an intelligent person can see right through. But somehow or other, it goes on because, this is what it means, to be in the material world. The cheaters and the cheated. And so they have, by the mercy of the spiritual master in Krishna, Om Jnana Timrandasya Gananjana Shlakaya. So open my darkened eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. So out of gratitude, we want to reciprocate. We're not kripana, we're not misers, we haven't received this knowledge and we're trying to lock it up and say, I'm just going to keep it to myself. It's a secret, right? So this is, and of course we see people also attempting in many ways to preach, but the effect is less, unfortunately. That people still, what did Marx say? Religion is the opiate of the masses. So it's, unless you have an understanding of who you are, and who is God, then this general sense of religion, or having someone who is ready to relieve you of your sinful burden, it doesn't empower you. It simply puts you in a complacent situation. And then, you see this in communist China. They have state religion. They have the Catholic Church, and they have the hierarchy, an exact reflection. But these are all state-approved priests, nuns, bishops, cardinals, like that. And they cannot say anything about, the truth. They can't say the truth, technically speaking. They want people to remain dependent on the state. The state is ultimately greater than God as far as they're concerned. And this, any other misconception of religion in general is simply a reflection of this type of state-controlled religion. Because they're telling, just like during COVID, we were told, you have to shut down. At a time of great distress, when people need more than ever to have the support that only knowledge, only transcendental knowledge can give you. there's attempts to restrict. So this type of, and it will progress in Kali Yuga. Unless we're stronger than those restrictions. By distributing, how did Krishna consciousness get into Russia? How did it get there? It didn't get there, well, we didn't walk through the front door. Everything was done through the back door. So this is a very, how can you say, special, that the devotees, they're not afraid of anything. They're willing to risk their lives in the service of Krishna. So we have to ask ourselves, are we willing to risk our lives? Now it's a very nice situation. But what if tomorrow they come down and say, no, you cannot distribute books anymore? Does that mean we stop distributing books? What do we do? You have to seek out another method to distribute this knowledge any way possible. There is no restriction. It cannot be limited. So such things are not happening right now. But it doesn't mean that it won't happen. We have to be devotees in all circumstances, under all conditions. Not just fair weather devotees. What's that famous term? Sunshine patriot. From the revolutionary era. Can't remember if it was Thomas Paine or whoever, but basically it was an insult. You've got all these men and they're all speaking very this and that, the other thing. But at the bottom line was that, they weren't fully committed. And so he used the term sunshine patriot. Only when the sun is shining, only when the conditions are favorable, then I'm a devotee. And if conditions are not favorable, then, I'll wait till the conditions are favorable again. This is conditional devotional service. This is not anyabhilasata sunyam jnana karma dinavatam anukulyena krishnanushyonam. This is just the opposite of the instructions of nectar devotion. But we don't always get a chance to implement it. But we see that, when great souls, are given an instruction, they find a way to execute that instruction. It may take time, whatever it is, but they don't give up. They don't give up. So like I said, this is easy now. Sunday feast, 300-400 people will come because it's Shivratri. And they'll come to get the blessings of the all-powerful Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ekale Ishwara Krishna Arsa Bhritya. Most know that everything emanates from him. But some don't. Some people come and say, where's Lord Shiva? Where's Lord Shiva? I said, there he is. He's right there. The reservoir of all incarnations. But you have to have the eyes and the knowledge to see. And that is also, that we're trying to impress people that, and Prabhupada used to use the simple analogy, just to water the root of the tree. And then everything is satisfied. You don't have to individually worship the demigods. There are 33 million demigods. Who can count? 33 million demigods. Can you satisfy all of them? No. It's not possible. So even a simple person can make a calculation that if I simply worship Krishna, then my obligations are completely satisfied in all circumstances. So that's the key. And that's how we should conduct ourselves and how we should present the philosophy of Krishna consciousness with no adulteration. And, if people have questions, then we should know how to answer them according to Srila Prabhupada's purports. Such books like Science of Self-Realization, Journey of Self-Discovery, these are excellent for preaching because every situation is there, Prabhupada speaking to this person or that person, and so nicely. Right? And that's a key, and we very rarely see how Srila Prabhupada would become unnecessarily forceful. He could be. If someone was bringing up some Mayavadi conception, he wouldn't hesitate in a second. He would just immediately shut it down. Yeah, because this is the real disaster of this age, is that people don't understand the difference between the Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And even they apply this term Bhagavan to some ordinary person. Everywhere you go, you see this person is called Bhagavan. But Bhagavan means one was full with 6 opulences. You know those 6 opulences, Bhakta Phil? Close. Wealth, strength, fame, power, knowledge, renunciation. It's there. So that's why Krishna is called the reservoir of all pleasure, not just then pleasure. Besides the reservoir of pleasure, is the reservoir of everything we see. He is the summum bonum. So whatever exists conceptually exists in the Supreme Lord. All beauty, all knowledge, all strength, all knowledge, all renunciation, all wealth. So everything is there. So nobody in the material world can possess all the wealth, or all the knowledge, or all the strength, or all the wisdom. You know? And of all those, Prabhupada said the most important, is the power of renunciation. Because if you have all of those things, and still you're renounced, you know, who can renounce? If someone has a beautiful wife, who will renounce? If someone has billions of dollars, who will renounce? Nobody. They will not. So that opulence is the topmost opulence, the ability to renounce those things. But so we see in the material world that nobody has these things in full. So therefore, it's a joke that someone is being given the title Bhagavan, possessor of all opulences. But no one will address it except Srila Prabhupada and his sincere followers. They can, without fear of retribution or political correctness, you know, call a mudha a mudha. You know. So this is, of course, you can, if you're an expert, then like Prabhupada, you will show that person his foolishness indirectly and let him get the understanding on his own. You know, moga samoga karmana moga jnana vicheta saha. Their knowledge is stolen by illusion. So the cure is to bring him into the light. You know, take him out of that darkness. What's that verse? Tamasi ma jyotirgama. Don't stay in the darkness, come to the light. But they don't know what the light is. You know, and that's unfortunate. So, and when we're presenting the unadulterated philosophy of the Vedas, and because they've not heard it before, they've only heard it third hand through someone who's interpreting according to their limited fund of knowledge, then it takes a little effort to say, have they actually appreciated the original Bhāgavatam? Because it wasn't here in the West until Prabhupada translated. And through what hardship we see. So in July, he's up to 8th, 9th chapter. And he finished up to 13th chapter. And then he entered Samadhi. With such effort. But this is priceless, not just because of because he did it, but because he allowed himself to be the transparent via medium. You know, this is the emblem of a surrendered soul, like Mother showed it, the emblem of devotion in Vrindavan, the emblem of this mood. So we don't see that anyone else has surrendered to this extent. It's very difficult to follow in Prabhupada's footsteps to that point. Who will on their deathbed continue to execute the instruction of their spiritual master. Most people are thinking, let me just kind of like fade away here, But this superhuman endeavor allows us to benedict the fallen conditioned souls with this highest knowledge. And so we're eager to continue, executing Prabhupada's mission. We don't have any hesitation. What do they say in the material world? He who hesitates is lost. Why do they say? My father used to tell me this all the time. I was thinking, well, what's he talking about? Because there's opportunities. When you see an opportunity, you should seize it. And they have that, What is that? Seize the day. So there's all these little motivational, epithets that people use to try to get it, conquer their lethargy and their procrastination, and all these things. So, so for us, we also have, we have our morning program. We have our sadhana. We have our japa. We have our vows. So all these things help us to, it's like feeding the soul. And the soul doesn't really need anything, but we, in our conditioned state, need to continually expose that. It's just like, there's, Maya's fighting us tooth and nail, whether we know it or not, whether we appreciate it or not. It's actually better for us when we see how Maya is trying to, because then we can mount some defense. Because she's so subtle that sometimes you don't even realize how she's affecting you. It's not until you garble that taps you on the shoulder and say, hey, Prabhu, it's 4:25, Mangalartik's in 5 minutes, what's going on? So this is, so we're properly situated, and we have everything that's required. There's nothing lacking in this process, nothing, except our commitment, except our surrender. And this is, so we're here, and we're seeing how Prabhupada has emphasized this always in different ways. And, the emblem of the Gita, they can say, Sarva Dhamma Pritya Jama Kamashana Braja. And it's a very, people misunderstand. Krishna is saying, give up all varieties of religion. Just surrender unto me. And this is a very difficult principle for those who are unfamiliar with Krishna's actual transcendental nature. This is that Jaktva Deyam Puna Janma Namit, this is it. One who knows Krishna's transcendental. So we're there inviting people to the Bhāgavatam class, passing out these books, simply to give them the introduction. Just like when you have you go to some business meeting and you want to network, and everybody's exchanging their business cards, and we're giving out Krishna books. This is also networking. This is also how we interact. We don't go make some small talk. It may be a little small talk. Hey, how is it? You look great. I like the way that, Gopal's famous lines there. You look very peaceful. So but this is how we make sure that the living entity, because Prabhupada personally instructed that you flatter a person. So, my dear sir, you're so knowledgeable, you're so like that. You don't go up to him and say, you're a rascal, you're a fool, you're a mudha. No, you flatter him. And then he's more inclined to take the book. You don't hit him over the head with it. That's Kalki. That'll come. The mood of Kalki. There was a Sankirtan devotee named Kalki. Prabhupada named him Kalki. Do you know Kalki? Very famous. But But he was a sweet book distributor. He wasn't going around trying to chop off people's heads or anything. But the name itself reminds you that, when Krishna, at the end of Kali Yuga, Krishna he pulls out all the stops, and that's it. You waited too long. You lost your chance. Now you have to go back and merge into the, and go to sleep until Lord Brahma wakes up. So this is interesting. So we have a big day ahead of us. There's lots to do. We're going to implement some new serving protocols. And so that will require some attention to detail and some cooperation from everyone involved, whoever's leading the kirtan, whoever's leading the class. Everything has to go according to schedule so that we can give the guests the best possible experience. Yeah. In the old days, why not? When you're old, you can always talk about the old days. In the old days, we used to set up the prasadam room. In those days, we all sat on the floor. You rolled out, they have this roll of carpet, just like they have in India. You roll it out. And then you set out the plates with the basic preps, that the rice, the chapati, this, that, the other. Then the hot preps will come later, that once the person sits down. So that was it. So everybody just came and sat down at a plate that's already there. You didn't have to, delay the line. Somebody sings, I want a little of this, I want a little more, I want this, 3, 4 plates. No, it was very simple. We would have to take all the tables out of the prasadam room, though, in order to do that. And then we'd have to seat everybody on the floor. Of course, that would be nice. It would be a completely different mood. And it can be done. It can definitely be done. It also works by a process of elimination, that those, young people don't mind to sit down. So they like it. They think it's cool. In our restaurant on 55th Street, Govinda's, we took out a section of the restaurant, and we built a platform. It was a raised platform, but it was carpeted with low tables, and people who wanted to sit on the floor could go in there and sit on the floor. Nice Vedic arches. My godbrother Maheshwar designed it and executed it. And very nice. And now he's in Ojai. He has Jagannath Enterprises. You can go online and see how he continues to serve Prabhupada in his capacity. Very nice. And we used to get very famous personalities, rock musicians and political activists. I remember, who was that guy? Cesar Chavez. Cesar Chavez came. And whenever these people come, they always have an entourage. They think they're like Krishna. When Krishna comes, he has his entourage. All these people have their, hangers on, followers, the other things. Kind of fawning over them, like that, just, you could see it in their eyes, they're starstruck, Because there's a little fame involved. So this is, and for a devotee, it's transparent. You see that this is not real. This person, he's just a union activist. He's not somebody, not a sage or a sadhu or, anything, sannyasi. But they took Krishna prasadam. This is the thing. This is the important thing. They came in and they took Krishna prasadam. Anyway, so that eliminated all the lines. People would just come down and sit down, boom, and then devotees would come down with the buckets and serve out. Went very nicely. And you had to sit next to a guest. That was the other thing. If you wanted to take the Sunday feast, you had to sit next to a guest. Couldn't go in the kitchen and make up your plate and disappear. You had to. But no one was allowed in the kitchen. You couldn't go in the kitchen. In 55th Street or Henry Street, places like that, unless you were a Brahmin or you had something to do. It was totally off limits, and everybody knew it. You don't go into kitchen. So there's, anyway, we have a lot we can consider going forward, how we want to arrange things. We're not always going to be serving downstairs with limited facility. You'll have a beautiful prasadam hall, and then we have to think, how do we want to arrange it? And you don't want some place that's just got a bunch of tables stacked up in it all the time, because there'll be multi-purpose rooms for different types of engagements. All the tables will be folded up and stored just like they do in hotels. They have, they rack them up and they put them on a carrier and they wheel them out and wheel them in as needed. Same thing with the chairs, and everything's clean. So this is ultimately how we want to have everything arranged. So just like these situations. If there's a necessity for tables, you can have them. In Vrindavan, everybody's been to Vrindavan, right? Everybody's been to Vrindavan here at our Krishna Balaram temple? You haven't been there yet? We have a big hall, Krishna Hall, just like we have Krishna Hall, and Balaram Hall. Balaram Hall is a smaller dining area. Krishna Hall is the big daily dining hall where we all go take prasadam. And there's only 2 tables for the old people, Prabhupada disciples, sannyasis like that, people like that, senior people. Everybody else sits on the floor. Everybody else. No. They're very easy to manage and maintain. They come in with the squeegees, clean it up, everything's done. So it's also good for people to, to see that the society takes care of the elderly men and women, give them some concession in this regard, some respect. So many things accomplished by one protocol. So should we take out all the tables and chairs? No. Take them all out, fold them up. And when people come down tonight, we don't have the carpet rolls for people to sit on. And we used to have them here actually, for the devotees. Yeah, long gone. But you can buy rolls of burlap when they sit down. Also, people won't sit on a hard floor for too long. So they'll eat and they'll go. And then they'll come back up here and we'll be set up for preaching. We don't have to have kirtan all night long. This is a huge room for preaching. Now it's just kind of monopolized by a few kirtanias. But, this is our premier facility here. And of course, people can stay downstairs and preach as well. Those who want to hear, it's no problem. So anyways, different ideas. We can meditate. We're in a transition. We're looking for a few good men and ladies and a few good ideas. How to run things, make it nice. Any questions or comments? I'll read the verse again, see how far off the track we got. During that period of penance, the sage Kardama, by worship through devotional service in trance, propitiated the personality of Godhead, who is the quick bestower of all blessings upon those who flee to him for protection. Prabhupada had that saying. You know that saying? He said, why should I fear for anything? I am a servant of Krishna. I am a servant of God. Why should I fear for everything? Right? No fear. Right? Nowadays, the youth have co-opted that slogan. You see it on every car, even in India. And it says, no fear. Across the back. But what does that mean? No fear of what? No fear of getting into a car accident? No fear of getting caught speeding? What does it mean? No fear. No fear of the authorities? No fear means I can do anything I want, no consequences? That's just foolishness. You don't know the consequences, and you're cruising for a bruising, as we used to say in the 50s and 60s. Cruising for a bruising. So we're like the traffic cops in Kali Yuga, telling everybody, wait, stop. You're going in the wrong direction. You need to get back on the path. This is spiritual life, not this. Right? But it takes an effort. And all of you know who are distributing books. You cannot distribute a book without sincerity and surrender. You cannot. You have no potency. It's not a mechanical act. It's called Sankirtan Jagya because this is the direct, connection with the super soul, in the heart of every living entity. And Prabhupada gave that. He was telling that we were reading that pastime. And Prabhupada was alluding to that, and he was saying that because the super soul is in their hearts. What was that one? It was about the one about the wallet. The man was saying, about something about Sankirtan. And Prabhupada said, super soul could make you take out your wallet and give me all your money. Because the person was asking, he was challenging Prabhupada, where do you get your money from? You look around, you see Prabhupada, Prabhupada always says, 108 temples, back in the day, 108 temples. Where do you get your money? Prabhupada said, we're just monks, we just distribute books, we depend on Krishna. No, where do you really get your money? They want to, they're waiting for what? Prabhupada to say, well, we're just cheating everybody, we're just stealing, we're just, no. He said, no, he says, he says, Krishna is in your heart. If he wants, he can tell you to open up your wallet and give us all your money. And that's a fact. Anyone who's distributed books knows this. Sometimes Krishna does it just to show you. Like when you're down there and you're pushing on, you've had a rough day. Nobody's taking anything. And you're thinking, I'm just a useless, devotee. I can't even distribute a Back to Godhead magazine. And then out of nowhere, because I remember I was there in the middle of nowhere, because that's the way we used to do. We used to, Sankirtan van would drop you off with a case of Back to Godheads, and in the middle of New Jersey or someplace. In those days you don't have a MyFare card or any way to go. You had nothing. The band came back at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, pick you up and take you back to the temple. You were out there all day. And this lady, so I hadn't done anything basically, and I was just like feeling, I'm in the wrong place. I said, they dropped me off at the wrong place. This is a dead mall. It was only in New Jersey there were malls in those days. What was that? Woodbridge. That was the mall. You ever go distribute at the Woodbridge Mall? No, yet? Should take it when we do a van party. You'll have to take some of these boys out and drop them off for a few hours. Let them taste that, what it means to be out there with them. So I was just about to sit down and read. I'm thinking, I'm just, there's hardly anybody here. The parking lot was empty. There's no cars. I would walk to the entrance of the mall where the stoplight is and try to get people at the light before they went into the mall. And then I was doing that for a few hours, and that's okay, that's better. Because otherwise I was just walking around trying to hit people up. And just as I was about to sit down to read, this, housewife pushing a shopping cart. I see her, and she's like trying to get my attention. I'm thinking, she can't mean me. I mean, I didn't approach her, and, does she know I'm a devotee wearing karmi clothes, we're wearing a hat, like that. No wigs. We didn't wear wigs in those days, but we just. So then she goes up to me and says, do you have that pink book? I'm thinking, does she mean a nectar devotion? Because, we didn't usually distribute the nectar devotion so much. Back to Godhead, incense, things like that. Sometimes a Gita. So she, and I was all I had was my personal copy, which I was just about to sit down and read. I took it and I showed her. I said, do you mean this book, Nectar Devotion? Her eyes lit up. She said, yes. Nectar Devotion is a very special book. So many stories. And I don't know, Krishna specifically wanted, because I'm not a devotee, so he wanted to show me that this is the potency, that, you have this person, a housewife, who comes up, and she doesn't know what happened to her copy. She thought maybe her husband or somebody who didn't want her to have it saw that, there's a picture of Krishna on the cover, this is a cult, but she wanted this book. And so she came all the way across this whole parking lot to me to ask her, because she must have gotten it previously from a devotee doing similar activities. So I said, all I have is my used copy. I mean, it's not so bad condition. But she said, that's okay. So I gave her the book, and she gave me a bill, and I put it in my pocket. I didn't look at it, because you don't want to embarrass someone. Whatever she was going to give, she was going to give. That's fine. It was a bill. I got back to the temple. No, it was before I got back to the temple. Well, I think because we used to count up on the way back in the car, in the van. I emptied my pocket, and I looked, and I had, a bunch of $1 bills, a couple of, and there's this $100 bill. I'm thinking, she must have given me this $100 bill. So then I thought, whole day, you're doing nothing. But then Krishna, that because of the effort involved, because you surrendered to the service, for whatever, even though you had, you were thinking that, I'm just wasting my time out here. I could be back cleaning the temple or reading Prabhu, No. This is the necessity. This is what you should have been doing. Make no mistake about it. Krishna is making it very clear. Make no mistake about it. So devotees have many stories like this on Sankirtan. They're there all the time. You see them in Dandabas. Devotees but hadn't done anything all day, and all of a sudden, one person comes up and buys all the books. So this is Krishna. This is the super soul. So we have to, this, at the least, should give you that confidence and the faith that these activities are not on the material platform. They're totally transcendental. We just may or may not realize it at this point in our advancement, our little advancement. But yet we continue. And 5 years becomes 10 years, becomes 20 years, becomes 30 years, becomes 40 years, becomes 50 years. You don't think that, well, I'm just going to do this for 2 more years or 3 more years. No. You just depend on Krishna. This is the ultimate. Consider that extent that we avoid them. Yayatama prapadante tam satava bhajami. As you surrender unto me, I reward you accordingly. So he couldn't be more clear in his pronouncement. But what are we thinking? That Krishna doesn't mean what he says? Or that it doesn't apply to me? Or this is Kali Yuga? He said that 5,000 years ago? Time and circumstance? No. So many excuses. So I was reading yesterday, and it jumped out because it was appropriate. It says you have to be stronger than your excuses. Okay? You have to write that down, Samaksh. You have to be stronger than your excuses. Okay? So anyway, this is the challenge. There are so many, excuses, but we have to ultimately rise above them and surrender. And then Krishna will automatically reciprocate. He's saying that. He's telling us. Every way he's telling us. And the more we preach, the more that becomes realized. And the more it becomes realized, then you see how your faith, you see how it becomes firmed. It goes from one state to another state. Just like in cooking, you start off with one thing and you get the final product. Mother Divyangi's famous sourdough bread, you see? It starts off just separate ingredients, but then by mixing it properly and taking care of it, you get that final result. So this is, we have to water that bhakti lata. It's no different. Whatever you do with care and devotion. And the result will be exactly as it's described, no different. Kevala Anandakanda. Any questions or comments? We want to get right down to breakfast and get ready for the Sunday feast, right? We have so much to do today. Huh? Yes, Narada Muni Prabhu.
Question. You mentioned how Krishna's Bhagavan, but so many times in the Bhagavatam you see Narada Muni being called Bhagavan, you see Lord Shiva being called Bhagavan. Of course, Srila Prabhupada gives his purports. I was wondering if maybe you could give some more elaborations on that.
On the term Bhagavan
Yeah.
as applied to any,
Yeah, because you're saying how like anyone else like being called Bhagavan or claiming. Of course, someone claiming to be Bhagavan is a little different than being called Bhagavan.
Yeah, he says
but-
some great people are called Bhagavan,
Yeah.
but that doesn't, everything has context. We understand that Bhagavan literally means God. But in the material world, a person could be said to be great. But, because when they say God is great compared to what? He stands alone. There's no comparison. And our conception of great is that it's something specific. There's no general great. You say, oh, this person is great. Well, what does he mean, great? He's a great father, he's a great teacher, he's a great what? So it's a very generic thing, just like when you say God. It's like a title, CEO. Yeah, God is the CEO, no question about it. But he's so much more than that. And so that's limiting, and God is unlimited. So anyway, so Bhagavan, Prabhupada also gives that expanded definition of Apavarga, Pavarga, all these different things. And some of those combinations are in even Bhagavan. So it can have a material definition, and then to those who know, it has a spiritual definition. So we just want to make sure that it's applied properly. We don't use it because of misunderstanding. We wouldn't use it in any term. And when Prabhupada named the devotee Bhagavan Das, he's a servant of the Supreme Personality of God, the possessor of all opulences. But nowhere do we see that Prabhupada ever used that term to address anyone or refer to anyone, except, pejoratively, and with negative connotations. Yeah, as a joke. This is a thing. So we have to follow in Prabhupada's footsteps, follow his understanding, just like this is we're his followers. So we're expected to follow. People are always trying to say, no, well, there's Prabhupada's just one teacher, this and that, the other thing. They say, oh, okay, hang on right there. As I think you're in the wrong place here. We're following Prabhupada. If you're following someone else, that's fine. We have no argument with you. I says, but we don't want to change our outlook based on your whatever understanding. And you're a neophyte, but they're all saying, well, we're not neophytes. You're a neophyte. So that's okay. I'm happy to be a neophyte. I have no problem. Remaining in this business. The trick is, Prabhupada said, devotees are saying, Prabhupada, I'm so useless. I'll never understand. I can't appreciate. I'm not advanced. I'm this, that, the other thing. So Prabhupada said, just hold on to my dhoti. I know a shortcut. So that supersedes all other aspects. Is that if you're fully faithful to the spiritual master, just like Srila Prabhupada, he was 100% steady in his faith. And that nishta, that steadiness, that firm conviction, if you're fortunate, everything you've done has developed that faith so that it's unshaken, that it cannot be broken. That regardless, because, not that we're necessarily associating with that, but that's the difference between Kanishta and Madhyama. That Kanishta is in his particular consciousness, and he can be convinced or swayed away from the philosophy because of his unfirm conviction. It hasn't fully crystallized, like so many other preparations, hasn't fully crystallized. But in the Madhyama state, one should be fixed. That's the actual distinction. He's fixed in consciousness. So We're trying to come to that stage. You know, and the more we read, the more we hear, the more we associate, the more we distribute this knowledge, then the more firm that conviction becomes. You know, we achieve that conviction by patience. And we embellish that conviction by enthusiasm. You know, so all these things are there. Utsaha, nishtaya, dharya, tatta, karma, pravartana. Rupa Goswami was not just some, you know, motivational speaker. You know, he didn't write Nectar of Instruction for a limited audience. I mean, in one sense, it is, because it's for the Vaishnavas. It's not for the ordinary reader. They read that, nobody can understand that. Only a Vaishnava, an aspiring Vaishnava, can understand Nectar of Instruction. You know, but that, it's there, everything complete, no lack. But people don't want to implement, you know, even though we know it. You know, that atihara, priyasya, chapa, japa, niyamagraha, janasanga, everything is there. All the instructions. How to remain fixed. Like that. How to come up to that level. So, we encourage everyone to read these essential books. You know, Nectar Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, along with your regular progression in Bhagavad Gita, Śrimad Bhāgavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. These, as I said, this Nectar of Instruction is very special. It's been demonstrated to me on multiple occasions. And Krishna obviously does that for a reason. And we see that, you know, for devotees especially, you know, when you're trying to develop the mood, you know, of devotion, then you have to read the nectar of devotion. Everything is there. Okay, any other questions, comments, corrections? Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Sri Sri Radha Govinda Dev ki.